lack of visibility to certain areas of AI is currently a problem, plus lack of skills on our cybersecurity side to what to watch for.
Based off of CrowdStrike's 2025, the global threat report, the number of phishing, so the voice-based social engineering scams kind of, skyrocketed to like 400%.
And if you remember, a big leak that came out of that was Samsung. They lost a lot of data. One of the developers wanted to get some help on his code. So what he did, he's just kind of like copied the code, proprietary code, and dropped it into ChatGPT, not realizing that, yes, sure, you get some help on that, but that code is now ChatGPT's additional data to help out. Like, I think cyber training and employee training in and around cyber training programs have evolved from just doing the phishing practices and all of those things to just generally let your employee know what should or should not be done in and around AI as well. We already seen a lot of our clients asking for that. They're like, hey, you know what? Those phishing things, great, but like, how do I train my employees on what not to do and what to do and what to watch for, even from the output of these AI tools, and what, some of those outputs could be dangerous, and things to watch for. So I think generally cyber trainings are expanding more and more to include a lot of AI training as well. Hi, everyone.
Oh, made it.
Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's discussion about the crucial topic of AI in the workplace and employee compliance with AI usage policies. This conversation is really designed to explore the operational risk associated with the non-compliance, and will set the stage for a deeper discussion on AI governance as a whole. Today, I'm honored to have with me an esteemed panel comprising of Vivienne Suen and Priya Mouli, and yours truly, Negar Farjadnia. Each of our panelists brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. So you're up for an insightful dialogue and much of a treat if you're a cybersecurity fan. I would like to start by just asking our panelists to introduce themselves. Priya, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So thank you, Negar, for the introduction. And first of all, super thrilled to be here as part of Canadian Women in Cybersecurity, and absolutely super excited to be talking about and deep diving into this topic. So by way of introduction, I'm Priya Mouli. I'm the CISO at Sheridan College here, based out of Ontario. So I have about 20 years of experience in the cybersecurity, privacy, and compliance space. Before I joined Sheridan College as a CISO, I was in the Big Four in the consulting world, similar to yourself, Negar, as well. But then as part of my current role outside of cybersecurity, privacy, compliance, one of the things that I'm absolutely expanding my portfolio into is AI governance. So I'm part of the AI steering committee and the AI working group as well within Sheridan. So there's a lot going on in this space. So super excited. Over to you, Vivienne.
Hi, I'm Vivienne Suen. I'm a distinguished architect at TD Bank, where I lead our cyber architecture practice. I've been in technology my entire career. I've never not worked in tech. And I've spent the past decade in a number of different cyber roles at IBM before joining TD 3 years ago.
Amazing. Thank you, folks. And then, last, I'm Negar Farjadnia. I'm a partner at MNP. I lead cloud and cybersecurity nationally at MNP. I generally deliver technology and cyber solutions to all our clients across Canada. Our clients would be fantastic people like Priya and Vivienne. And I often work closely with our client to make sure that they can fulfill their security and privacy obligations. Prior to MNP, I worked at other big consulting firms and other enterprises within Canada. Canada. And as Vivienne said, similarly, I have done tech and cyber all my life. So happy to be here and be a part of this conversation today. Without further ado, I'm going to jump into a bunch of questions that we have prepared and we want to have a conversation around for you today. And I'm going to start with the first one that, either we like it or not, AI will be a hot topic in our enterprise, everywhere you are, even not at enterprise, even at home. Especially the workplace, our CEOs, CFOs, and CIOs have made promises to the board to save time, save money, and bring these AI tools in. So given this is already well underway, let's talk about key new risks that we all should consider. So who wants to get us started? Priya, did you or Vivienne?
Sure. Yeah,
I can kick this off. One of the risks that I'm always focused on is how does an organization's use of AI change your attack surface, right? What additional vulnerabilities are you introducing? And we're coming into this at a point where a lot of organizations still don't have a handle on basic data security. So you don't have a handle on data classification, on digital rights management, on data leakage and data loss prevention. And now you're adding in these systems and these services that ingest massive amounts of data, your machine learning models that learn on your data and then start to produce output and make decisions on things on their own. And it's changed the entire tech landscape, and with it, your attack surface. So that's a very real risk to any organization, not just private enterprise, any organization that's using these tools. And then the sprawl of these services and not understanding the centrality of them is a huge impact on the attack surface.
Absolutely. Priya, would love to hear from you as well on those.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would agree with all of the above, right? With what Vivienne said. But I think in terms of the risks, so actually, let me take a step back. So here, as part of Sheridan College, so what we've done is that we do want users to embrace AI and adopt AI because surely, I mean, it does have a lot of benefits to offer. So which is why we kind of put together an acceptable use framework or guardrails, so to speak, taking into consideration some of the risks that are out there and that we know of, right? So within Sheridan, we've kind of put together an acceptable use framework, guidelines, so to speak, across 3 pillars. One of which is focused on research, the other one being focused on teaching and learning, and the other one meaning for the rest of administrative for the rest of the administrative staff, right? And some of the things that we talk about is I think similar to what was mentioned is around, data privacy and exercising caution and discretion in terms of what you are feeding and what files you are attaching as part of a user prompt in a public AI model. So that is something that we absolutely have as a clause in there. But besides that, one of the consideration, I wouldn't call it a risk, but one of the consideration points is to also be human-centered, right? Having a human in the loop, but then we really emphasize the point that AI is not meant to replace, right? But it's meant to supplement or augment and boost productivity, right? That's so right. In light of that, if there's any decisioning that we leverage, that we use an AI model for, then we absolutely have a human in the loop.
For sure. And then maybe I'll kind of just to bring everything you all said together, I can give an example of a potential cyber incident and why the risk is different. Imagine if you're like a government official and a threat actor steals your credentials, like this happens all the time. And then generally this threat actor gets access to that government official's emails, files on the laptop, potentially some shared drives and all of those things. But it does take them time to go through all of that and sift through and maybe start to kind of one thing they used to kind of just start to download a lot of big files, which would trigger other systems and say, hey, what are you doing? But right now, like if a threat actor gets access to a government official who potentially has an AI system, for example, like we mostly all use like Copilot for M365. So if they take access of that, they can just really run a prompt saying, hey, make an Excel sheet for me that has all my expenses for past 2 years. And this will go to everywhere that this government official has access to, nicely prepares an Excel sheet, and that Excel sheet getting leaked in a matter of minutes could be much, larger risk for this government official, because it can be used potentially for politically motivated defacing campaign or other reasons. So this is why there is risk. It's similar risk to what we had before, but in kind of a different scale and different speed of what's happening in our environments. And that's what we probably have to pivot on how we're going to avoid the risk, in a sense.
Right. Where someone had to know their way around some scripting before, now you may not even need that, right?
Exactly. Not a lot of skills, just some prompt engineering, probably.
Yeah.
Which is the human language.
Yeah, and I think that was also another point I wanted to bring up earlier, right? So in terms of the benefits, yeah, certainly it's democratization of skills, right? Like, for example, to be able to write a query in Splunk, you don't need to know SPL 2.0, right? Like, so that's just an example. But the thing is, of course, it's a powerful tool, not only in our hands as cyber defenders, but for the threat actors as well. And I think going back to your example, Negar, I think one of the other things we've seen is also the proliferation, right? Like a hockey stick pace of deepfake social engineering scams, right? And based off of CrowdStrike's 2025, the global threat report, the number of phishing, so the voice-based social engineering scams kind of, skyrocketed to like 400%. And we've seen some recent incidents as well where, a lot of $1 million were lost at a few organizations. So we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
If we start talking about deepfakes, we could be here all day. I am terrified of how good they're getting. Month by month, deepfake technology is getting better and better, and it's very scary.
For sure. But to bring us back to kind of employees, right? Because the deepfake is like, as you said, can of worms. If we open that, we'll be here all day. But bring us back to the topic of corporates. I wanted to kind of touch on firm approved versus non-firm approved tools. We've seen employees kind of you give them a bunch of tools, they still have their favorites, and they kind of lean towards this favorite. You probably remember days we had OneDrive or Dropbox, but they still use their own Google Drive to save files and things like that. Same thing on the AI side. I've seen employees do whatever they can to use their favorites. So what are your thoughts? Priya, you work in an institution of a lot of students and all that. So what have you seen there, and what are your thoughts on those?
Sure. Thank you, Negar. And I thanks for the question. That the timing couldn't be more right, because we are really living and having conversations with our faculty counterparts and our research counterparts as well. So again, just to set the context of a higher education space. So yes, we do strongly believe in the power of academic freedom. And let's be honest. I mean, AI, yes, we saw its lightning pace from late 2022. But the thing is, it's still a brand new technology in my mind, where we still are not able to fully appreciate all the benefits and all the risks that come with it. So as a result of which, we institutionally, we are, we have a license, we have an institutional wide license of using Copilot, the web browser version. But then there are use cases where we have requests from the faculty and the research sides of the houses as well, in terms of, looking at other AI tools, even in terms of, meeting recordings, right? Like, for example, even something outside of Copilot or outside of a Teams Premium, right? So we do have that. And right now, we do not yet have a compiled list of the firm set of approved tools. And it is interesting for me, given my background. I know I didn't mention this upfront, but then earlier, before I joined Sheridan, so when I was with the Big Four, my consulting focus was primarily in financial services, where we have a set of a standard set of firm approved tools that we use. And if we were to use anything beyond that, it kind of goes through an exception process. How it works in the higher education space is that, and again, just based on the conversations I'm having with my counterparts here, is that we don't have that. And right now, like I said, we have the acceptable use framework, but then we do have firm approved tools that we already have, that we've done our security and privacy checks against, where we have them listed. But then we do have a process saying if there's any other tool you want to use, then submit your business rationale and what additional benefits it has compared to this tool. And then we will kind of go through it by a case by case mechanism and kind of vet the security and privacy risks and then be able to provision. So that's kind of how it's.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
I love how people-centric everything you're doing at Sheridan is. The attention you've put into understanding your different user constituencies, and that students have different needs and wants than faculty do, than researchers do. Like, I think that's really forward-thinking of you, and a flexible and sensible exception process. That's key to getting people on board with enterprise required tools, right? It's the education of, we can't expose you to this risk, but here's the enterprise approved thing that gives you 60% of what you want to do. Can we start there, right? Like, that's really important, I think, to getting people on board. Otherwise, we've had so many issues with shadow IT. Now we have to worry about shadow AI. If you don't get buy-in from your user community and from your employees, and you're not taking this from an employee enablement lens as well, then you're going to be playing whack-a-mole forever.
Absolutely, Vivienne. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I think one of the main reasons, of course, we're doing that, and I think in the higher education space in general, it's more of understanding all the use cases versus taking a hard-nosed stance. But then one of the main reasons is similar to what you said. It's to make sure that every consideration and every request goes through us, right? Because the minute we start saying no, they're going to circumvent, right? Like, go around us, and we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, or find a way. Like, I don't know if anyone recalls from the firm approved or non-firm approved. Initially, when ChatGPT came out, everyone was pretty lax about it, because they're like, yeah, I'm going to use this to write an email. I'm going to write this, write a letter to my customer or to my manager, and all those things. But if you remember. A big leak that came out of that was Samsung. They lost a lot of data. One of their developers wanted to get some help on his code. So what he did, he's just kind of like copied the code, proprietary code, and dropped it into ChatGPT, not realizing that, yes, sure, you get some help on that, but that code is now ChatGPT's additional data to help other people. So they realized the code actually leaked everywhere, and that's the code that they really needed to kind of keep their arms around. And that's where it started. I think it was that 2023 when an employee did that at Samsung, and everyone has started to kind of like, hold on. You can't just leave all the doors open. You got to have a set of firm approved versus non-approved, and you have to put safeguards around what you can just copy paste to these things versus, because you just have to remember, anything you copy to this sort of tools, the data becomes their data in a sense. They put part of the training data, and employees just have to be very, very careful about what they're doing with that data. That is corporate data, not their personal data.
It's so true. I think that's another reason why acceptable use policies, the more you can tie those to the risk that you're preventing from, the easier it is for people to understand. Like, no, you can't put your source code into ChatGPT because our source code is intellectual property.
Exactly.
A lot of people, and I think there's a lot of people in the developer community who may not think of the code as intellectual property in the same way as you would, like some of our documents, for example. But it is. Your source code is intellectual property, and tying acceptable use policies to risks can also kind of help with broadening the perspective.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Very much
I was just gonna sorry, I was just gonna add to that in terms of saying that so I think this is where this is where, I mean, we put our heads together when we were putting to the acceptable use framework, is that we wanted to kind of, have which are the mandatory set of controls we have versus the measures or the guardrails that are subject to user discretion, right? The mandatory things are absolutely don't put any sensitive data, including your personal data, institutional data, IP, or anything sensitive, right? Even in terms of a user prompt or attaching of files. But then what we have left to user discretion is with respect to the use of, again, in the academic context, there are AI detection tools as well, where we can kind of, see if there is any tools that are used for final assessments and so on. Right. But then just a point to keep in mind is that the AI detection tools are trained on the same data that our Gen AI models are fed on as well. So that's just something to keep in mind, right? So what we have done there is that we leave it to the discretion of the faculty member to decide as to what the professor or professors want to do in their class, right? Like, do they want to use the AI detection tools, or do they not want to use, or what are some of the administrative measures they put in place? Like, for example, if a student were to use a Gen AI tool, how are they citing it, right? How are they having like full disclosure saying, I used ChatGPT or Copilot for this particular section? Mm-hmm. So that's how we kind of approach it.
And to add to that, to sort of, bring it all together, like I think cyber training and employee training in and around cyber training programs have evolved from just doing the phishing practices and all of those things to just generally let your employee know what should or should not be done in and around AI as well. We already seen a lot of our clients asking for that. They're like, hey, you know what? Those phishing things, great. But like, how do I train my employees on what not to do and what to do and what to watch for, even from even from the output of these AI tools, and what, some of those outputs could be dangerous, and things to watch for. So I think generally cyber trainings are expanding more and more to include a lot of AI training as well. Awesome. So that brings us, so we talked about risk. And then we talk about tools and how we, use the certain enterprise-grade tools and controls. Be doing all the good things, but like, how do we monitor and protect? Because as Vivienne said up front, like, if you're not protecting your data, all these things are great, but like one leak just shuts all the doors. So what should we do differently, you think, to keep our valuable assets within the organization from leaks and attacks and threats? So Vivienne, you have started it. I'll let you kind of expand on it.
So many thoughts on this. The way that I look at AI security is, on the one hand, I think I've come up with a way of explaining it that's easy to understand. It's a simple way of explaining it, but it's not easy to do. So you have to protect your data, right? You have to protect your models, and you have to protect the usage. Underneath that, you have to protect your infrastructure, and then you need a governance layer on top of it. And I'm trying not to wave my hands too much because we're on the Teams meeting, but I have a very nice, 5 boxes slide that's like, here, this is it. This is the high-level strategy. Fantastic. Very easy simple, right, to describe. Very hard to do. Because when we talk about monitoring, there are so many different facets of behavioral monitoring, of users, of endpoints, of APIs. And because a lot of your AI services are invoked via API calls. So if you don't have an API inventory, if you can't understand centrality of API calls, if you can't understand what or detect what anomalous API usage looks like, that's a huge blind spot for many organizations. And that was a big blind spot before the proliferation of AI tools and services. And it's worse now. When we talk about behavioral detection and behavioral analysis of users and assets, that's an incredibly complex area. And there's lots and lots of tools out there. I don't personally believe that there's a one-size-fits-all user and entity behavior analysis platform. I've always been an advocate for heterogeneity in your security defenses. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. There's a lot of concern about vendor concentration risk. And it adds complexity to your security controls to have a lot of different monitoring tools from different vendors. But there is, I'm not going to say a sweet spot, but a relatively safe spot in the middle where you're not all concentrated in one vendor and you have enough different pieces to cover different aspects of behavioral monitoring. Do I know what that looks like? It's different for everyone. It's a complex area, but there are a lot of tools out there, and it all goes back to what your overall risk appetite is and working with your technology and risk partners to strike that balance.
For sure, sure. Any thoughts from you, Priya?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, absolutely agreed. API security certainly is something to consider. I think for us, one of the things is that so we don't have a private model AI model yet. I mean, we're still using the public system, right? Combination of ChatGPT and Copilot, but then I would kind of say that first principles, right? It's going back to first principles. Yes, Gen AI, yes, is the new shiny tool out there. However, I mean, it's kind of a very similar approach, right? It's like when the internet came about earlier. So I would kind of say going back to first principles and defense in depth. And I think Vivienne, you touched on this, right? So sure enough, you have your network security, you have your network monitoring tools. Like for example, there's a large data file upload or something, or monitoring, like say from an endpoint or a user perspective, where you see there's detection of sensitive data uploads, right? So I think it's going back to first principles and applying defense in depth, network security, application security, data security, user identity management, and really containerizing and containing, right? Like the spread of how you use your Gen AI tools and who has access to do what in these tools.
Yeah,
and DLP is a huge consideration.
Yes,
for sure. And again, like we all have these basics, but we don't have it quite the way we want it. And I think one of the major things I've seen clients complain about is lack of visibility. Because again, we have all the logs, but like let's say we have a chatbot, like even as an internal employee and insider risk, what are the chat like prompts that they're putting in? Because someone could take control and run that prompt. So lack of visibility to certain areas of AI is currently a problem, plus lack of skills on our cybersecurity side to what to watch for. We have a little bit of time to catch up right now, but we are kind of in that areas like, okay, this is how we were doing things before. How do we pivot and watch for new signs and new things that comes with the AI tools and everything that comes with it? So I think we really nicely wrap that up. Hopefully that helps some of our folks' audiences. We have a couple minutes. I want to make sure we wrap this up nicely. And then if we could take one item, one key takeaway from the topic of AI in the workplace, what would that be? And Priya, maybe you go first, and we can just go around the table.
Sure. Yeah, thank you, Negar. Yeah, so I'd say in terms of key takeaway, I mentioned this upfront, but being very human centered and having a human in the loop. So because I mentioned that upfront, I'll give you another key takeaway. I think the one thing that comes to mind is to really be intentional and focused on the use cases you want to solve for with respect to the Gen AI tools, right? Okay. Just having all the shiny new toys, like for the sake of it, may not make the most sense. Like, for example, if you have a smaller problem to solve, you don't need a 2 billion parameter model. So being very thoughtful and mindful about the use cases and you want to solve for, so you can approach and put security like from the get-go in terms of using your Gen AI models is something I'll focus on.
Absolutely. Vivienne?
Yeah. I think if we want to, like, I see us collectively, like the world basically, is being at this really dangerous tipping point with our use of AI. And whether the use of AI becomes more useful for the bad guys or the good guys, like I feel like we're kind of teetering back and forth on that precipice right now. If we want to stay ahead of this and we want to leverage AI tools for productivity without increasing more risk, you've got to get back to some of the basics of being able to do discovery of your assets, of your data, of your endpoints, your APIs, everything. You have to integrate that in with automation so that and detection, right? So that you can detect things as they're happening and not wait for the terabytes and terabytes of data to have been exfiltrated before you suddenly notice something anomalous. And it's expensive and it's difficult and it's not doable for a lot of people. Like I work for TD Bank. We can afford to, have our own internal AI solutions and build things in a walled garden. That doesn't work for everybody. So you have to kind of go back to what Priya said as well, is that understand the usage and what can we use open AI tools for and what do we have to put in-house, if at all. And it's
That's
different
right.
for everyone, and it has to be a collaboration with your users, with your technology partners, with your risk partners. You have to have everyone at that table.
Everyone at the table. Excellent. Well, this has been a great conversation. If I can say the last few words before we say bye to everybody. In short, make sure everyone's using the company approved gadgets so your precious data doesn't end up on the unexpected war tour, in a sense, because that's what we don't want to happen. And with that said, I think we are at time. I wanted to thank you both for joining me today in this great roundtable discussion. I want to thank you, the audience, for listening to us today. And if you need any question answers, you know where to find us. We all on the internet, and you know how to find us. So we wish you the very best and good luck using AI tools. Cheers.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good conference.